One great way to build authenticity around your brand is to visualize your story. So bring your story to life through images. So in a lot of my content, I will use like collage style photos. If I'm talking about going to the gym or fitness or health or exercise, there's pictures of me at the gym with
Yeah.
healthy food, exercising. If I'm talking about speaking on stage, there's pictures of me on stage with a microphone in my hand in a podcast studio. So how do you visually tell your story? And I like to call that visual hooks. A lot of people talk about hooks in your content, but not many people speak about how to use your visual as a way to grip attention and also bring people into that vision that you're creating.
So hi guys, this is Ayman and I'm back with another episode of Mindful Marketing. And today we have Shoaib Ahmed with us, who is a founder and speaker at his own company, which is SA Personal Branding. And he's also built 170 personal brands for founders, coaches, and even creators. And he's one of my personal favorite. I love his content. So today we have a very interesting topic to talk about. That is, how do you turn your personal brand into a sales engine? So all over to you, Shoaib. What do you think? What are the steps when it comes to building personal brands? Because a lot of people believe that personal branding is all about just posting. But how do you get towards, monetizing your personal brand?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for having me as well, by the way, on the podcast. Really excited. So there's a lot of things that come into it. So it's not just about posting content, right? Because people don't buy from a single LinkedIn post. They buy from a brand. They buy from somebody who they feel they can trust, that they like, who's built authority, credibility. So it's more than the content itself. It's about how do you build an entire universe that people want to be a part of. That's the difference. So you've got to really think about like strategic positioning, your profile, like what does it say about you? What do you do? Who do you help? You've got to really signal where your expertise lies, that desirable outcomes that people get from working with you or investing in your product. And then why should they trust you more than anybody else who offers the same service? So your content has to differentiate you from everybody else, which is why I think, especially now in this kind of AI, ChatGPT driven world, you are the differentiator. So it's how do you show up? How do you build in public? How do you turn followers or passive LinkedIn scrollers into brand champions? So they feel like when they need that service or they want that product, you are the first person they go to. That I think is the secret to successful monetization.
That's very amazing. So you have actually helped a lot of founders, 170 plus founders online. So what do you think is the biggest mistake that people make when they start off with their personal brand?
I think a couple of mistakes. So, firstly, not posting enough. You can't post once or twice a week and expect to grow quickly. Obviously, the more you post, the more chance you have of making an impact, of expanding your reach, of reaching new profiles, of increasing your following. And audience really is currency. So, the bigger the audience you can have, the more engaged that audience is, the more able you are to sell whatever it is you're selling. So that's one mistake, not posting enough. The other is kind of using copy and paste formulas and templates that might have worked for somebody else, but that might be because they operate in a different space or their goals are different, or they might have been posting and doing that for the last 5 years. But when they first started, they might have had a very different strategy. So it's all about knowing who your audience is, what you're trying to achieve, and then finding a technique to bridge that gap. So if you're struggling with copywriting, for example, invest in a copywriting coach. If you're struggling with design, invest in a designer because you have to look like a professional. You can't just say that you're a professional. You have to back that up with social proof, with great design, with great visuals. For example, if you want to be a speaker on stage, you should be sharing pictures of you speaking on stage. You should be sharing videos of you confident on camera. You should be talking about how you prepare for a talk. So, there's a lot more than just post on LinkedIn and just being consistent because people can be consistently rubbish as well. So you've got
That's
to
true.
understand what does good look like? What is my audience? What are they looking for? And how can I convince them to engage in the universe that I'm creating?
That's very nice. So a lot of people they actually suffer from how to actually create brand authenticity because we have the same niche. Like there might be a lot of podcast hosts like me online. So how do I make sure that my brand is authentic while also posting?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was actually speaking to one of my coaches earlier today, and I was showing them how to use visuals and imagery to build authenticity. So right now, there's a lot of po text-based posts on LinkedIn using kind of chat GPT generated images or infographics that are
Yeah,
very kind of copy and paste. But one great way to build authenticity around your brand is to visualize your story. So bring your story to life through images. So in a lot of my content, I will use like collage style photos. If I'm talking about going to the gym or fitness or health or exercise, there's pictures of me at the gym with
yeah.
healthy food, exercising. If I'm talking about speaking on stage, there's pictures of me on stage with a microphone in my hand in a podcast studio. So how do you visually tell your story? And I like to call that visual hooks. A lot of people talk about hooks in your content, but not many people speak about how to use your visual as a way to grip attention and also bring people into that vision that you're creating. So that's one way to be authentic. The other one is to tell great stories. So understanding the power of taking an experience that you've had and creating some emotionality behind it, because emotion is what compels people to take action. When people feel moved by you, or when they feel inspired by you, or they feel energized by you, that's when they're most likely to sign up to your newsletter, visit your website, connect with you, send you a DM. So you've got to be able to effectively tell stories. I know how to tell stories specifically on LinkedIn because the way LinkedIn is as a social media platform, as an algorithm, it's very different to a lot of other social media channels. So, thinking about how do I grip attention in the first two lines of my post? How do I help people see themselves in my content so they feel seen? How do I bring relatability into my content so other people can read that and think that's me, I need that thing, or that's where I currently am. You've got to kind of give people that aha moment.
That's very nice. I actually learned a lot of visual hooks from you as well, like how to tell stories. So you as a founder, I've seen I'm following you online and I see that you're sharing a lot of personal stories. Like recently you were on vacations and I was reading your post and you were sharing that very openly. A lot of founders actually do not want to share their stories online. They're a little hesitant. So how do you deal with such people? What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, so I mean, if somebody wants to work with me, that's for me like an unconditional. Like you have to be able to confidently share your stories and speak about who you are as a person, because that's what I think makes a great personal brand. Otherwise, you're just branding a company, and that's very different. So in terms of who I work with, it's people who, I set those expectations early on because I have the data to prove that it works. I've written over 17,000 LinkedIn posts now, and the most powerful kind of indicator of success is storytelling without a shadow of a
Yeah.
doubt. But you can also tell stories that don't have to be super personal or super vulnerable either. You can tell an amazing origin story about how you founded your business. You can tell an amazing client story as well. You can tell an amazing story about your product. It doesn't have to be specifically, like the worst thing that happened in your life and how you overcame it, or you don't have to share intimate stories about your family or, your mental health. You could do in effective ways, but it really is about if you want to grow on LinkedIn and you want to stand out and you want to position yourself as somebody different in your space, you have to do something different. You can't just say, I'm different, work with me. You have to prove it. And one great way to do that with your personal brand is to actually have something that you stand for. So, really unique perspective. This is why I always tell people never sit on the fence, never just kind of try to please everybody, because you're not going to really move anybody to become a fan of your content. And I would rather have a small number of fans and loads of people who are alienated by my content, because those people I've alienated, they would never work with me anyway because we wouldn't be a great fit. But those fans that I've built, I can really work with them to build something amazing. So, show conviction in your messaging, stand for something, really back your values and tell amazing stories. Because without that, it is really tough to grow on LinkedIn. And actually, I think you just simply fall behind.
Yeah, that's right. I agree with that. So right now you just talked about, USP. A lot of people, I'm sure you work with them as well, they actually find it very difficult to find out what their USP is. They don't know what's unique in them. So how do you help them identify that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a number of ways. Obviously, I do a lot of research in the onboarding stage with clients, especially when I'm coaching them. before we even start coaching, we have surveys that they fill out. I do deep dives into their website, their sales decks, their product, their business. I listen to their previous podcast episodes to really understand like holistically what who they are and what they represent and what their business is about. Um, but if you're struggling to identify it for yourself, there's an exercise that I always recommend people do. So it's simply have somebody, a friend, or maybe a partner, or somebody in your team jump on a Zoom call with you like we are today and just ask you questions, like an informal interview about your life, right? So just start talking about where you grew up, what life was like as a child, what you wanted to be when you were older, what was your experience in the education sector, what about your first job, how much did you earn, what did you do in that job, what did you learn in that job, and I conduct these kind of informal interviews, if you like, with all my clients who are on like retainer contracts. And through that, I genuinely get 30 to 40 LinkedIn post ideas because as people are
Yes.
speaking about themselves, they might not realize what they're saying is actually really interesting. Or I might, in my head, connect that story they told me about their childhood to something that happened to them last week. And that would make a great transformation story from where they were to where they are today. So it's all about kind of connecting the dots. And sometimes it's really hard for you to see that if you're in the thing. So it might just be a case of get somebody else to ask you questions, record it, use their AI software to transcribe it, and then go through that call and think, okay, what are these? Where are the stories in this? What am I saying that keeps coming up? What am I repeating? Because if you're repeating certain things, that must be something that you really believe in or you hold dear to you in terms of values, and that could be a great differentiator.
Wow, I love that strategy. So, there are a lot of clients that, we are also working with a lot of founders and all of that. And we get these clients who always say that from the first day they want sales and they don't really care about posting and all of that. So, according to you, at which stage can you actually monetize your personal brand and get sales?
This is a really good but tough question. So it varies with industries. It depends on what you're selling, whether it's a high ticket, low ticket. It depends on your
Yeah.
existing audience. If you've never posted on LinkedIn and you want to then use LinkedIn as a channel to generate leads and revenue, it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight because before people buy, they have to trust you, like you. They have to want to invest in you because they believe that you can deliver what you say. And if you've never posted, you're essentially a ghost online. You don't have any proof, you don't have any branding, you don't have an identity, you don't have conviction in your beliefs. They're not going to work with you immediately. For me, it took me maybe 6 to 7 months of posting consistently on LinkedIn. And then I started monetizing almost the first week when I went freelance because been building that brand and I'd built a little bit of thought leadership and authority in my niche. So because for 6 months I was speaking about personal branding, about marketing, about LinkedIn growth, about copywriting, people then associated me with those things. So when I said, "Oh guys, I'm launching my own freelance business, I'm opening some spaces," people were like, "Oh, okay, I already know this guy. I already know that he does great work in this field. I've already seen some of his results. I'm just going to work with him."
Yeah.
So you've got to do that brand awareness stage. I always think of it as a three-tier funnel. So you have your brand awareness at the top, which is how do you make people kind of remember you and like you and want to work with you? So that's all about great storytelling. It's about positioning you as an individual first and foremost. So when you appear on somebody's newsfeed, they read your stories, they get to know you, they get familiar with you. The next stage of that funnel is kind of middle of the funnel, thought leadership. So how do you build authority around what you say? So that's about picking 2 to 3 key themes you want to be known as an expert on and talking about them consistently. So for me, that would be personal branding, LinkedIn, entrepreneurship. Those 3 things I speak about in my content all the time. I share valuable frameworks, I share insights, tips, predictions, forecasts, research, data, and that all kind of congeals around me. So when people think of personal branding, LinkedIn, entrepreneurship, they're likely to think of me because I'm speaking and showing up in their life every day on their phone or their laptop, talking about those things. The bottom stage of that funnel is the conversion. So that's when you've built the trust, you've built awareness already, and then it's how do you convert that attention or that demand into potential revenue and clients.
Yeah.
So at that stage, it'd be creating offers, handling objections in your content. So if somebody, would ask, why would I work with you? Or you're too expensive, or I'm not ready to work with you yet, your content should be responding to those concerns even before people have DM'd you or reached out to you, because you're priming people for that sell. But equally, you could get people onto a landing page, onto your mailing list. There's loads of different ways to convert. Conversion doesn't necessarily mean a sale. It could be capturing a bit of data. It could be some customer research. It could be some feedback on the MVP of your product. So there's loads of different ways to convert, but without the attention, without the likability, without the trust, without the authority, it's very hard to sell. So you've
Yeah.
got to do those things first. And the timescales vary depending on, who you are, what industry you're in, what you're selling. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So a lot of people actually also say that cold DMs have now become obsolete when it comes to sales pitches and all. So do you also believe that?
I mean, I've never done like a completely cold DM to anybody. I'm sure it's worked because, there's an industry of people who do that, but I do think it's much harder in today's day and age to do that because so many people are doing it. And also the amount of effort that you have to put in for a very small return is actually I personally I
Yeah.
think it's the worst thing ever. And I've never responded to a cold DM. Well, I have to have known that person, or at least had a touch point with them in the past, or some familiarity with them, which is why personal branding is so powerful, right? Because that's the great way to then start a conversation because you feel like you already know that person. I prefer to respond to buyer intent signals. So what I mean by that, and this is something I coach my clients on, it's when somebody maybe follows your account, views your profile, engages with your content, visits your website, responds to an email that you've sent, they're showing some form of signal to you that they're interested in what you have to say. I would then DM that person at that point. So it might be like, hey, I saw you check out my profile. Are you here because you saw a post that you liked, or maybe are you interested in personal branding? And that feels like a much more organic start to a
Yeah.
conversation because they've led that. They've taken the action to show it interesting to me, and I'm now responding to that. I find that has a much, much, much higher success rate than just cold spamming loads of people who've never seen you, never heard of you, because the likelihood is they're not going to reply to you. So that would be my approach. It would be more of a warm DM approach, but
Yeah.
the DMs are really, really powerful when used properly. But I like to pair that with good personal branding, great content distribution, and good positioning through my profile.
That's nice. So you've been in the personal branding, niche for a very, very long time. Like I'm very new to this industry. So what changes have you seen?
Mhm.
Because founders before they were never having their personal brands. They were literally ghost. But now you see every other founder, they now have a personal brand. Even people who are passing universities, they have a personal brand. So what type of changes have you seen over the years?
Um, a lot of changes. I mean, firstly, like LinkedIn as a platform has changed massively. It was more of a corporate jobs platform before. It was very dominated by technical buzzwords, corporate jargon, very kind of professional, sanitized, very unopinionated content. Um, and people viewed it as just simply a tool to either hire people, find jobs, or generate clients. Today, I think it's much more of a creator-led platform where people are building entire businesses through
Yeah.
LinkedIn, through their personal brand, through posting online, which is, I think, is super, super exciting. And obviously, it's how I started my own business. But in that time, the algorithm itself, the way it kind of determines what good content is or what good content looks like, that's changed. There's more people posting on the platform now than there ever has been before, and I think that will just continue to increase. More recently, we see the expansion of LinkedIn paid advertising because LinkedIn is now realizing, okay, there's an opportunity to monetize here. Similar to
Yeah.
kind of Facebook back in the day, 10 years ago, that was the platform for everybody to create content on. And now Facebook's very much like dominated by sponsored posts or Facebook ads or retargeting. And I think the same thing will eventually happen to LinkedIn. But at the moment, I still think it's a huge opportunity for you to organically create content. So you've got video contents being pushed a lot more. You've had the removal of certain features, for example, the pinned comment.
Yeah.
LinkedIn at one point had LinkedIn stories, a bit like Instagram stories, but that disappeared. So I think LinkedIn is it's an exciting time. Clearly, they're testing a lot of new features. I think what would be really helpful, though, if I had any bit of advice for LinkedIn, is to really listen to creators and not just think through like the monetization aspect of where can we make the most money in terms of, businesses and LinkedIn ads, but also how do you get more creators posting on LinkedIn and how do you reward great content as well? Because I think that would be an amazing way for the platform to grow and stay relevant as well in a very fast-moving social media world.
Yeah, so basically exciting times are coming. So you have a LinkedIn company page as well, and then you have your personal page as well on LinkedIn. So what do you think is the difference? Do you think that company pages do work on LinkedIn? And if so, then what type of content can people post? Because I don't see so many company pages working that well on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a company page. I don't necessarily use the company page because for me, the nature of my business, I'm a solopreneur. I do personal branding, so it'd be silly of me to totally invest in a company brand when, the thing I teach people is how to build a personal brand. So my personal brand has to be great. Um, so I personally think the reach and potential opportunities that come from a personal profile are much bigger and
Yeah.
outweigh the benefits of posting on a company page. Companies who target bigger ticket clients, they might want to have that polished company page brand. I do think there's huge power in a company page, depending on the industry, obviously, and your audience. But what I would say is to not treat your company page as a static, you know, generic,
Yeah.
like traditional corporate page. You have to inject it with life and personality and build the company culture within your LinkedIn posts. So, how do you showcase your team? How do you showcase brand values in interesting ways? How do you create interesting visuals, whether that's video or imagery? How do you really bring the company feel to life and make people want to work with that company? So, I think, just posting on company pages in the way that it has been done for the last 5, 10 years isn't necessarily going to have much positive impact. I
Yeah.
actually personally think it's much better for a founder of a company to be active online, posting, because that's an individual, that's somebody you can see, you can trust, you can actually engage with. Whereas obviously a company page is like a third party channel almost. You don't really know who's behind it. It's much harder to have that one-to-one dialogue and it feels a lot more impersonal. So there's merit in both, but I would definitely, if I had to pick one or say where would you invest the majority of your time, resources, and money, it would be in your personal brand because that lives with you forever as well.
Yeah.
So even if you were to close a company and start a new company, if you have a strong personal brand, that will carry into whatever you do.
That's nice. That's amazing advice. So a lot of people, like we discussed earlier, there's a lot of content clutter on LinkedIn, especially because not everyone is having a personal brand. So what is your technique? How can someone who's new on LinkedIn and starting their personal brand actually remain unique and stand out? And what are the type of like content types they should use? Whether they should go for images, carousels, or videos?
I think if you're brand new to the platform, it's very hard to convince people to engage with you and be invested in your content. You have to feel like, like why would somebody stop and read content from a stranger that they don't know? It's very rare for people to suddenly stop and take out 3 minutes of their day to read and engage with your content if they don't know who you are. So that I would say the best thing to do at the beginning is to really build that personal in your personal brand. So really show up as somebody people want to listen to. And the best way to do that is telling great stories. What you believe in, what you stand for, and doing that with a lot of emotionality and visual storytelling and mapping that A to B transformation in your content and being relatable as well. I think relatability is really, really powerful. It's a great currency for branding and marketing and sales in general. So that is the advice I'd give those people. And then build in that authority thought leadership content, but there's no point spending 6 hours creating a carousel if you have 200 followers and maybe 10 of them are going to see it, because that's just
Yeah.
a waste of time, right? So start with things that are low friction. And then once you've got some of that visibility and you've built the authority, then you can start thinking, okay, how can I really pivot the brand around 2 to 3 key themes? How do I embed offers into my content? How can I experiment with different forms? But again, also experimentation in itself is a great growth technique because you can see what's working, you can look at your analytics and do more of that because every industry is different, every account is different, every audience is different. So there's some degree there that you've got to really look at what you're doing and adapt and pivot as you go.
Nice. So how important do you think is community building? How much do you actually engage with other creators online? Do you think that's also very important in monetizing your personal brand?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, I engaged with so many people on LinkedIn because it was this big community. In the early stages, everybody's supporting each other. I think in the last year or so, maybe I haven't been as active in the engagement side, but that is because I've built the brand a little bit more and I have the privilege of um, not needing to do lots of outbound engagement because I've built that trust with my audience. They know what I stand for, and I've kind of cemented who I am in the industry. But at the start, I would definitely say that it's good to engage with other people, find like-minded people. I actually think the most powerful thing that you get from community engagement is not necessarily leads or um, direct revenue. It's actually the things you need to survive as a business owner. It's the accountability, it's the friendship, it's the support. Some of my best friends today are the people who I was engaging with when I first joined LinkedIn. And they've helped me, I've helped them, and we've kind of scaffolded our businesses that way. So you don't need to, engage with 50 people a day. Pick people who are relevant to you, or maybe currently 1 to 2 steps ahead of where you want to be or where you currently are, and learn from them, engage with them, give
Yeah.
them something back as well. Don't just expect to take from people. How can you add value in their lives so they want to return the favor?
That's nice. That's I actually relate with that because I found very good friends on LinkedIn too. So this brings us at the end of the podcast, Wave. At the end, would you like to give any advice to our audience, especially those founders which are actually starting off their personal brand?
Quicker you start, the quicker you learn, the quicker you reap the rewards. That's it, really. I've so many people who say, I'm going to start my personal brand next year, or it's
Yeah.
on my to-do list, or one day I'll get to it. And whilst they're saying those things, opportunities are just floating away and going to other people. So the quicker you start, the quicker you can actually reap the benefits and the rewards of everything that you're doing.
That's amazing. It was lovely having you. I learned so much, and I'm sure my audience is going to learn. Hope you enjoyed too.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.